Frost as we begin things on Tuesday, with temperatures dipping to -1 to -3 Celsius in rural parts. But a bright start to the day ahead of this feature, which is a rapidly deepening low pressure during Monday and the first part of Tuesday. This is Storm Barra, named by Met Erin because of the strong wind impacts across the Republic of Ireland. But it's going to bring widespread wet and windy weather to much of the UK on Tuesday, starting off towards the southwest. Those winds picking up, the rain pushing in during the morning. And in western areas, the risk of 60 to 70 mile-per-hour wind gusts around exposed coasts. Snow for a time for Northern Ireland, as well as that rain bumps into the colder air. But the more significant snow is expected across parts of northern England and Scotland, where at lower levels there'll be some reasonable snow amounts, but over the hills 10 centimetres of snow is likely, along with blizzards, so some really treacherous conditions here. And as the strong winds move into Scotland and Northern Ireland, as well as northern England, the risk of disruption here in places. Wednesday stays unsettled with further rain and wind, turns quieter on Thursday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Join me, Alex Phillips, for the afternoon agenda on GB News, Monday to Thursday from 4 p.m. till 6 p.m. We don't lecture to you or try to tell you what to think. We do a deep delve into a topic with views from across the range of debate, therefore leaving you, the viewer, to make up your own mind. Join me, Alex Phillips, for the afternoon agenda on GB News, 4 till 6, Monday to Thursday. You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. Lots coming up today. We're talking health, sickle cell disease. Do you know what it is? You will know all about asthma. I'm talking to an MP who wants better care for sufferers and what more can be done to help those with disabilities. Plus, the latest in my series of interviews with MPs where we get to know the real person. Today is Shadow Mental Health Minister, Dr Rosena Alin-Khan. But first, it's your news with Rosie.
I'm Rosie Wright. This is your news at 12 o'clock. Boris Johnson is pledging to break up county lines gangs as part of the government's £300 million new drugs policy overhaul in England and Wales. Under the scheme to disrupt the rural trade in Class A narcotics, recreational drug users could face having their passports or driving licences confiscated. Police will also be able to seize dealers' phones to contact and text their clients, warning them about the dangers of drugs. Well, it's a 10-year commitment and it includes what ministers are calling the largest ever single investment in treating and rehabilitating addicts. Labour says the government's own budget cuts are to blame for the problem becoming worse.
And the question for the government is not just over the plans today, but the money that they've taken out of the system. Millions and millions of pounds have been taken out of the system over the years, and that has caused a lot of the problems. So I want to see the plans, I want to see the strategy, I want the Prime Minister to take responsibility for the money that's been taken out of criminal justice in the last 10 years that's caused many of these problems.
The Education Secretary is going to make a statement to MPs later today about the circumstances leading to the murder of 6-year-old Arthur Labinjo Hughes. A major government investigation is underway to look at safeguarding failings in the case. The Attorney-General has also launched a review into sentences handed down for the couple who killed him. Arthur's stepmother, Emma Tustin, was jailed for life for his murder. His father, Thomas Hughes, was jailed for manslaughter. Safeguarding experts say the system of child protection needs rethinking.
Safeguarding will only work if we work together. And that is so true. We need to work together in safeguarding. It's not just about reviewing. We need to actually put in place practical measures to ensure that practitioners can join up and have further oversight.
One of the creators of the AstraZeneca COVID vaccine has warned future pandemics could be more lethal. Professor Dame Sarah Gilbert says scientific advances made during the coronavirus pandemic must not be lost. She also warned the Omicron variant may be more resistant to both current vaccines and natural antibodies. This follows reports that nearly 2 in 3 housebound people are yet to receive their booster jabs.
I'd like to finish on a high note, but the truth is the next one could be worse. It could be more contagious or more lethal or both. We cannot allow a situation where we have gone through all we have gone through and then find that the enormous economic losses we have sustained mean that there is still no funding for pandemic preparedness.
The former leader of Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi, has been jailed for 4 years for inciting dissent among the country's military rulers. She and her National League for Democracy party were removed from power in February in a coup. The ruling is the first in a series of cases being brought against the 76-year-old Nobel laureate. Suu Kyi faces 11 charges in total. She's denied all charges. Now, thousands of people who are still without heating and hot water, they're now bracing themselves for yet another storm. The Met Office warned Storm Barra will hit the UK on Tuesday with gale-force winds of up to 50 miles an hour. Yellow wind weather warnings are in place across the country. The Energy Networks Association said that over 3,000 homes were still waiting to be reconnected to power supplies after Storm Arwen first hit 10 days ago. Tesco warehouse workers and drivers are planning on staging a series of strikes in a dispute over pay. More than 1,000 workers are going to take industrial action for several days from December the 16th in response to the company's offer of a 4% pay rise. Trade union Unite says this offer falls well below the current retail price index inflation rate of 6%. Every household in Wales is being given a free tree to plant in a government bid to help the environment. The Deputy Minister for Climate Change, Lee Waters, kicked off the scheme by digging a hole for his own sapling. The £2 million plan will see Welsh homes either choose a tree of their own to plant or have one planted on their behalf by the Woodland Trust. That is all your news for now. I'll have more in half an hour. Right now, The Briefing with Gloria De Piero.
Coming up this hour on The Briefing, we're talking health, but not COVID. Do you know what sickle cell disease is? Well, apparently it's not well understood, even amongst medical professionals, and people are being badly let down. We all know about asthma. 5.4 million of us have it, and it kills 3 every day. I'm talking to the MP calling for more support. And I have the latest in my series of interviews with MPs where we get to know the real person. This time, I talked with Shadow Mental Health Minister, Dr Rosena Alin-Khan, about her childhood, working on the front line during the pandemic, and her love of singing. Give me your political briefings. Send in your views and opinions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Now, there are 14.1 million people in the UK with a disability, and Friday was the United Nations International Day of Disabled Persons. This year, the focus is on proving rights in the context of COVID. There's debate in Parliament tonight, and I'm delighted to be joined by Vicky Foxcroft, Labour MP for Lewisham-Deptford and Shadow Minister for Disabled People. Vicky, welcome to the programme.
Hi, Gloria.
Now, nearly 2/3 of housebound people have yet to receive their COVID booster. That's reported in the Daily Telegraph today. Internal documents reveal at least 300,000 people unable to travel for jabs who have not been protected by a booster vaccine. What's going on here?
Yeah, this is really worrying, and they really need to sort this out, because we knew that there was a problem in terms of getting GPs to visit their homes. The government have known this for some time, and it really needs to get sorted, because those people are very vulnerable and they need to make sure that they get their booster jab, particularly with, increasing rates at the moment.
Let's go to Friday and the fact that that was the UN Day for Disabled People. You want disabled people, your party wants disabled people at the heart of the COVID inquiry. Why is that important?
It's really important because 2/3 of the deaths of COVID are actually disabled people, but also the experiences that disabled people went through in this pandemic, such as, struggling to access PPE, social care, food. These are really important issues, and their lived experience when they're part of this inquiry will make sure that we'll learn better to make sure that the lessons are learned and disabled people aren't left to feel like an afterthought again in the future if we should have any other future pandemics.
Line for this inquiry and how it will operate, who they will hear from.
Sorry, I missed that.
Is there a timeline? Is there any sense of when it's going to happen, this inquiry, and who the government will call? Have the government been open and transparent, in your view, about when it will begin and who it will hear from?
I mean, arguably, they needed to have this inquiry ages ago, but they've gone and said that it will be in the first half of next year. And indeed, by Christmas, they've gone and said that they'll be appointing the chairperson of the inquiry. Now, that person's not been appointed yet, and we're not that far from Christmas, so they really do need to crack on with this now.
Just explain the differences in how people who are disabled have experienced the pandemic. Of course, disabled is a massively broad term, but particular people who have been particularly harshly affected in the pandemic.
I mean, I touched on a couple of things such as access to food, PPE, social care, but indeed, even in terms of the government communications, they have been quite poor in terms of the pandemic. Indeed, I asked the Prime Minister on a number of occasions when he had his press conferences whether or not they'd ensure that they had British Sign Language interpretation, making sure that everybody knew what was going on. And just one other thing, in terms of the costs during this pandemic, universal credit was uplifted overnight, yet legacy benefits, many of which are for disabled people, weren't, having the corresponding uplift. And disabled people, on average, have extra costs of £583 a month. So they really did need to do that to make sure that people weren't struggling in terms of their finances.
It's a legacy benefit.
So a couple, you would say, employment support allowance, job seekers allowance, but these are benefits that disabled people have, which are different to the universal credit, because they weren't able to move across to the universal credit system, because indeed through various court cases they were seen to be worse off if they had done so.
Now, let's be fair to the government. They have had a fantastic vaccine rollout, now part-way through a fantastic booster rollout too. When it comes to the vaccine, this government is doing a good job.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, we also have to praise, our scientists, our wonderful NHS for all the work that they've gone and done to make sure that this, vaccine rollout was able to be a success. But if I was to say one thing, we're seeing the new variant, and actually we need to make sure that we're getting the whole world vaccinated, because it's when we get the whole world vaccinated that everybody will be safe.
And it's also reported more good news that the Health Secretary is about to announce that a new COVID antiviral pill which can be taken at home, is to be offered to the clinically vulnerable and depressed people within as little as 48 hours of them testing positive for COVID. That is a game changer, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And as somebody who's immunosuppressed themselves, you know, I think this is great news. But what we have to make sure is that the communications around this and the distribution of this are effective for it to be able to be that game changer.
You did mention that you were immunosuppressed. There seems to be quite a lot of COVID cases in Parliament. Is that a worry for you?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I try as hard as I can to make sure that I keep myself safe. But one of the things with the immunosuppressed population is that we don't know how well the vaccine works on us. And we need to go and have that extra information. But also MPs in Parliament, they just need to put the masks on. I really don't get why they're not doing that.
Why do you think, why what's your theory? Because it is, you know, quite extraordinary, given it is the law to use them.
Yeah, I don't really understand it. I mean, if you look at the different benches, you see on the opposition benches, everybody's gone and got their masks on. But, you know, some, and more now in government, are actually wearing their masks, which is to be welcomed. But actually, everybody who's not exempt from wearing the masks really should be putting them on, because actually it sends the right signal to the country as well.
Guessing that there's quite a good testing regime in Parliament. Do you all get, I don't know, do you get daily PCR tests, or what's the testing regime like for MPs and staff, crucially, in Parliament?
And we're supposed to be tested twice a week. So I actually do my tests at home before I go into Parliament, but you can get tested in Parliament as well. So it's not too bad, to be honest.
Foxcroft, Shadow Minister for Disabled People, thank you for your time. Good to talk to you today.
Thank you, Gloria.
Now, coming up, we're going to talk to Jim Shannon. That is after the break.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hi there. A spell of rain and, in some places, snow to come this afternoon, but followed on by bright spells and showers and a blustery breeze for all of us. That wind reaching gale force in the far northwest this afternoon as the rain clears eastwards. And in this part of the world, I think there's the risk of some snow falling for a time as the rain cools the atmosphere. Could even settle in one or two spots, but I don't think there'll be any widespread issues with that snow. And it does clear to bright spells and showers. Those showers on the heavy side with hail mixed in at lower levels, and again some snow falling over the hills of Wales, Northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. The showers rattle through on a blustery breeze into the evening, but eventually overnight the showers tend to ease away. The wind dies down as well, and under clear skies temperatures fall away. A widespread frost as we begin things on Tuesday, with temperatures dipping to -1 to -3 Celsius in rural parts. But a bright start to the day ahead of this feature, which is a rapidly deepening low pressure during Monday and the first part of Tuesday. This is Storm Barra, named by Met Erin because of the strong wind impacts across the Republic of Ireland, but it's going to bring widespread wet and windy weather to much of the UK on Tuesday, starting off towards the southwest, those winds picking up, the rain pushing in during the morning, and in western areas the risk of 60 to 70 mile-per-hour wind gusts around exposed coasts. Snow for a time for Northern Ireland as well, as that rain bumps into the colder air. But the more significant snow is expected across parts of Northern England and Scotland, where at lower levels there'll be some reasonable snow amounts, but over the hills 10 centimetres of snow is likely, along with blizzards, so some really treacherous conditions here. And as the strong winds move into Scotland and Northern Ireland as well as Northern England, the risk of disruption here in places. Wednesday stays unsettled with further rain and wind, turns quieter on Thursday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Join me, Alex Phillips, for the afternoon agenda on GB News, Monday to Thursday from 4 p.m. till 6 p.m. We don't lecture to you or try to tell you what to think. We do a deep delve into a topic with views from across the range of debate, therefore leaving you, the viewer, to make up your own mind. Join me, Alex Phillips, for the afternoon agenda on GB News, 4 till 6, Monday to Thursday.
I'm Darren McCaffrey, and join me on The Briefing Monday to Thursday at 3 p.m. You'll get your afternoon fix of all the latest political stories, debate and analysis, as well as interviews with some of the biggest names in UK politics.
It's a problem that affects the whole world, Darren.
From Westminster to Cardiff, Edinburgh and Belfast, if it's happening in UK politics, we've got it covered. That's The Briefing with me, Darren McCaffrey, Monday to Thursday, 3 p.m. on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. Well, we have one of the highest rates of asthma in the world. 5.4 million people suffer from asthma in the UK, and 3 people die from asthma every day. That's worse than it was 10 years ago. 2/3 of sufferers say it has a major impact on their lives. Well, Parliament will be debating this tomorrow, and joining me now from Northern Ireland is Jim Shannon. He's DUP health spokesperson, and he'll be leading that debate. Thank you for coming on the show, Jim. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well, Gloria, after all this time. Yeah, you still look the same. Well done.
Now, the number of people affected by asthma in the UK is amongst the highest in the world. Why?
Probably down a number of things. Number one, I think COVID-19 probably has maybe clouded the asthma issue. I mean, let's be honest, probably every health issue within the NHS in the United Kingdom and across all the regions as well, COVID has affected that. So maybe the first thing is that maybe the asthma has fallen on the back foot, so to speak. While it may have fallen with interest or with direction or with focus or with priority, but at the same time, you rightly said, Gloria, that the fact that there's 5.4 million people in the UK that suffer from it, and 3 people will die every day. In the time that COVID has happened, we've probably had maybe 600-700 deaths, and I chair the APPG on respiratory health, and we've just finished a survey and an inquiry on that there, which we put forward a number of recommendations. So we have some ideas what we want to do. Asthma exacerbations. 77,000 hospital admissions each year, a cost to the NHS of £1 billion, and productivity is another 1.2 billion in that as well. So a real serious issue. Government has got to address it. I think they have made some attempts to do so, and I like to give credit where credit due, but I think we need to have it done better and a more focused way if that's possible.
Look at some of those recommendations a bit later. But just first of all, just tell me how asthma can impact on the quality of life of those with the condition.
Yeah, well, I suppose from a personal point of view, I've always had, well, not always had, my second son was born with psoriasis and asthma. So my son Ian is one of those people who takes the inhaler. And the fact is, I mean, if he didn't have the inhaler, whenever he gets short of breath, it can become a struggle for life and death, and the fact that we've had so many people dying every day across the United Kingdom is an indication of that. Just one was a focus in the press just last week. So it's about how we improve the outcomes early, how we perhaps maybe reduce the dependence upon the salbutamol inhalers, but the inhalers really have saved lives. I know for my son, the doctor said that he would grow out of the psoriasis, but he would probably become an asthmatic, and that was absolutely right. So he has it with him all the time to make sure that when he gets short of breath, he's quite fit, by the way. So don't think for 1 second that an asthma comes upon them who have poor physical health elsewhere. Ian's very, very healthy, and I find in most cases people are healthy. But the lady was in to see me just now. She also is an asthmatic and has been all her life. Again, depends upon that blue spray to get her through her day. I know age is not on people's side. As we get older, we're all of more aches and pains and more problems, complex needs. But asthma features in probably nearly every one of my cases when it comes to health, and people applying for benefits where you become aware of it. So massive issue. Yeah, it's a life and death issue in the United Kingdom.
And patients, according to your findings, patients who are using excessive numbers of inhalers, you say should be flagged, identified and immediately seen by an asthma-trained clinician. So just explain to me the thinking about excessive use of an inhaler.
I think excessive use of an inhaler is something that the inquiry highlighted. I think the figures suggest that some 22.5 million blue inhalers are issued each year, and we I think tried to highlight the issue of severe asthma. So it's about identifying the issues in a way that we can then prevent further attacks. We'd asked for a number of things to be done through the inquiry, and it was important that we did so. Restoration of asthma reviews. In other words, if someone is continuously using more than 5 per patient, and then we do need to look at that issue and want to review that. Unfortunately, I think the figures suggest some 65% of people with asthma do not receive a yearly review. So I think for us, we would like to see that being better looked after by the NHS. I even know that NICE have put forward recommendations that they should. But the fact is, it hasn't happened, and we need that to happen. And the fact that patients who are using excessive numbers of inhalers should be flagged. Again, they should be identified. They should be immediately seen by an asthma-trained clinician. And would like to probably maybe to see trigger alerts in the number of prescriptions. In other words, when you hit 5 inhalers and prescriptions, then that should trigger the need to have the matter addressed. Switching to maintenance and reliever treatment as well. A 2018 study reported that in some patients, that's the maintenance and reliever treatment, would allow SABA, that's the salbutamol, and blue inhaler-free treatment, and therefore be an effective way to reduce the overuse. Again, we've identified some of the issues. We're not in the business of just complaining. We're in the business of putting forward suggestions. So our inquiry suggested that tomorrow morning will be a wonderful opportunity for the Minister in her response to the debate to give us an outline of how the Minister and Government will outline the plans for improvement over the next period of time. Very important to do so. That's why the debate tomorrow is so important.
And what would you like to hear her say? What are the most important things she could announce in how to improve asthma outcomes?
I think the one thing that we do, and I need to give credit for ministers and government when they do, they've already assured us of a £350 million investment that would provide some 2.8 million scans in the first full year of operation. What we want to make sure that within that money, the government, and we welcome it, government has seen that there's an issue. So we want them to ensure that there be no postcode lottery for the treatment. In other words, you might get it in London, you may not get it in Newcastle. It might be available in Torquay, but not in Liverpool, for instance. I'm not saying that's the case, by the way, but it's a postcode lottery to make sure that everyone in the United Kingdom gets that. I understand that the £350 million investment, some of that money will come out to the regions, to Northern Ireland, to Scotland, to Wales, through the Barnett formula. So we will gain some of that as well. That's to make a diagnostic hub. I think it's a very positive step forward, but we do need to ensure that everyone has access to it, and we need the staff in place as well. We need staff trained, we need staff available to respond to it. So if we set up a hub, I think it's good that government has recognised that and they've referred to the 5 highest health gains, and this is one of them. The government's missed a severe asthma targets due to COVID. I understand that. But we also have to allow the system to work its way through in a way that can be constructive and a way that can really, really help, and we need that to happen.
Jim Shannon, it's nice to see you again. It's good to have you on the show. Jim Shannon, DUP health spokesman, who will be leading that debate on asthma in Parliament tomorrow. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Gloria. Take care. God bless you. Keep safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, the government have this week pegged Crime Week. That's what this week is known as in the government's grid, at least. And today the focus is on drugs. They want to be seen as tough on crime, of course. And much of crime is drugs related. There'll be a crackdown on county lines and more money for prevention. Well, joining me in the studio to tell us more is our Home Affairs and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, Crime Week. It's in the government grid. So what can we expect to hear from them?
Indeed. Afternoon, Gloria. This is the government trying to seize back the initiative to show that on big domestic issues such as crime, they are there. They have policies to try and make people's lives better. It's drugs today, and we started off the day in the early hours of this morning with the Prime Minister on a drugs raid in Merseyside. So some unsuspecting person had their door smashed in by Merseyside police, and there on the street just outside was the Prime Minister, resplendent in a police-issue beanie hat and his body armour, there to tell us that the government is investing hundreds of millions of extra money in trying to tackle this issue. To be honest, it is an issue that successive governments have tried and failed really to make much in the way of any impact on. It continues their festering criminality that really has blighted the lives of so many people right across the country. And so it will, I'm sure, continue. But what the government want to focus on, it follows a review that took place recently into the government's drugs policy that came up with a number of recommendations. Key to that was trying to look at prevention and treatment for those who are hooked on certain drugs, the opioids and crack cocaine as well, the opioids like heroin, for instance, trying to ensure that those 300,000 people are given some better opportunity and way out of that never-ending cycle. because what's happening at the moment, of course, is that people are offending, shooting up on these drugs. They're being caught, they're being criminalised, they're committing crime, of course, to feed that habit. Then they're ending up in prison. And in prison, you know, they've got access to drugs just as easily inside prison.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
But
I just can't
supply and demand, which is still there in prison as well. And of course, they come out and they continue that cycle. So it's about trying to break that cycle, offering people alternatives, offering treatment programs, diversion schemes. That's the kind of focus that the government wants to emphasise. But at the same time, it knows that certainly amongst its electorate, there are many people who want them to continue to be very tough on those who are involved in the criminality around drugs, the drug trade as well. So in addition to, we're told maybe about £500 million in treatment schemes and diversion schemes, which if true is a very significant amount of money. In addition to that, there's a few £100 million that is also being invested in trying to smash these county lines drugs operations and just go after those involved in the criminality side of it as well.
And warning for middle-class drug users too.
Yeah, I have my gimmick flashing warning light on my head for these. The plans, we're told, to take away the passports of those who are taking drugs recreationally, maybe take away their driver's licence. I don't think in practice that will ever at all be workable. What are they going to do that? If someone is caught with some cocaine at an office party, immediately sees their passport? I doubt it very much. It makes a good headline.
It does.
And, they know that.
And it might make people think twice.
Well,
you never know.
You never know. It may be more for habitual offending. It may be something that a judge has as a sanction further down the road. I can't see it. Joe Bloggs at the Christmas party caught with some cocaine, immediately getting their passport or driver's licence suspended. As I say, that's one that we put in the gimmick section. But there is some, other more significant news there. I think on the diversion and treatment side of things, and also the criminality side, they want to go after those responsible for county lines.
Brilliant. As ever, Matt White, thank you. In a moment, I'll have my interview with Dr Rosena Alin-Khan, Shadow Minister for Mental Health. She shared her heartbreaking memory of a dying mother whose young children could only see her over an iPad. But first, here's the news with Rosa.
I'm Rosie Wright. Here are the latest headlines. Boris Johnson is pledging to break up 2,000 county lines gangs. It's part of the government's £300 million drugs policy overhaul in England and in Wales. Under the scheme to disrupt the rural trade in Class A narcotics, recreational users could face having their passports or their driving licences confiscated. The Education Secretary will make a statement to MPs later about the circumstances leading to the murder of 6-year-old Arthur Lobinjo Hughes. A major government investigation is underway to look at safeguarding failings in the case. Arthur's stepmother, Emma Tustin, was jailed for life for his murder. His father, Thomas Hughes, was jailed for manslaughter. One of the inventors of the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID vaccine has warned future pandemics could be more lethal. Professor Dame Sarah Gilbert says scientific advances made during the coronavirus pandemic must not be lost. She also warned that Omicron variant may be more resistant to both current vaccines and natural antibodies. The former leader of Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi, has been jailed for 4 years for inciting dissent among the country's military rulers. She and her National League for Democracy party were removed from power in February in a coup. The ruling is the first in a series of cases brought against the 76-year-old. She's denied all charges. Yorkshire have confirmed Darren Gough as the county's new managing director of cricket. The former England international will be in post until the end of the 2022 season. His appointment comes after Azim Rafiq's allegations of institutional racism in the club. The club's chairman, Roger Hutton, and chief executive, Mark Arthur, both stood down following the claims. You are right up to date. I'll be back with more on today's news at 1 o'clock.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk. Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Now it's time for the latest in my series of special interviews with MPs, where we go behind the politics and get to know the real person. This time I talked with Dr Rosena Alin-Khan about growing up, her heartbreaking experiences during the COVID pandemic, and her love of singing.
Rosena Alin-Khan, your mum's Polish, your dad's Pakistani. How did that affect growing up?
Gosh, I think we were the rather funny-looking family, as described by everybody, especially in the 80s, when no one had really seen mixed families. My mum is super blonde, and my dad, obviously, Pakistani. And so people would stare at us quite a lot. And I think people were quite unfiltered in a way that they're more careful about these days. So people used to ask my mum, when my brother and I were with her, where we adopted, where did she get us from? We endured quite a lot of racism as well, actually. My mum found it. She wasn't that welcome by her community, I think, for being one of the first people to marry outside the community. And she received a lot of racism generally. I think it's really interesting because it was one thing experiencing racism when we were with my dad, but actually seeing the racism and vitriol towards my mum was quite a unique thing. People were quite angry at her very publicly for clearly having kids that were mixed, and the things they used to say to her were quite horrible. But growing up in Tooting, which is a really wonderfully diverse community, there were obviously quite a few Polish people, quite a few Pakistani people, but there weren't many mixed families. And so I think I always felt like I belonged in my community and was welcome in my community, but didn't really often feel like that, like further afield. And yeah, it's interesting looking back now. I think very early on I was aware that society wanted to put me in a box. I found that identity was something that was easy for other people to work out rather than for me. So they would be like, well, she's a half Catholic, half Muslim girl, or she's a mixed race or a half caste, or it's almost like people wanted a label. And so I think you sort of grow up wondering a little bit about who you are from a very young age. And I think it took a while to work out, yeah, I'm Rosena and I'm Polish and I'm Pakistani and I'm proudly British. And you can be embraced for all that you are without having to pick a side. And I think it was so interesting because people would like to say, well, you're not full Polish, are you? Or be very surprised if you speak Polish, or be like, well, you're not full Asian, are you? Well, I was like, well, my heritage and ancestry isn't any less just because one of my parents is from there instead of two.
How many languages do you speak?
Well, it depends if we're like ordering a kebab type language or whether it's sort of fluent. I mean, my Polish is pretty good. I speak random bits of French because I did that at school. My Urdu is noteworthy for ordering kebabs and curries. And I like to think I can speak English. So bits and pieces. But, I feel really lucky. And I think it makes me who I am, that I have this sort of rich tapestry of heritage. I think I can literally blend in anywhere, particularly being from South London and it already being really diverse, having Polish, Pakistani heritage, but really owning how British I am. And that can mean being many things in your heritage, but you're still proudly British.
Your mum and dad split up.
Yeah.
How old were you?
Well, it was complex. I was quite young. It was a challenging childhood to say, but it's all it shaped a lot of who I am now, I think, and the things that I fight for. But no, my mum did a fantastic job of raising my brother and I by herself, and she's amazing actually. But it was not easy as a Polish woman, a Polish immigrant. All her family were and still are in Poland, raising two mixed race kids under Thatcher in South London with not a lot of money.
Were you poor?
Yeah. I'd say that we were poor in material terms, but rich with feeling loved by my mum, I think. And I think when you haven't got any extended family, the core around you are what really matters. And I think my mum had to sort of love us enough for a mum and a dad and aunts and uncles and grandparents.
But you had a relationship with your dad who sadly you lost this year, didn't you?
Yeah, my dad and the journey with my dad, I think, has taught me the power of forgiveness. I'd say that much. And I had a relationship with him, especially towards the end, and it was one of the most painful things I think I've been through ever has been losing him this year, because obviously came on the back of helping so many other families as a doctor through COVID, and then not being able to see him properly in his care home because he had dementia, and standing on the side of the street with my little girls waving and dancing to Pharrell Williams Happy to try and make him feel loved so that he'd still eat and things like that. And then he went into hospital and was unwell for a few months, and then made it out and then passed away. We were able to be with him in April, but I'm grateful that I was able to be there, because I spent the pandemic supporting families who couldn't be with their loved ones in hospital, and the fact that I could be there was really important. And in the end, I was mourning his loss now, mourning a lot of things from the past. So the grieving process for me was pretty acute, I'll be honest. I'm still not over it.
Are you grieving now?
Yeah, very much so.
I haven't lost my parents. There'll be some who have, some people who are watching who haven't. Do you have any advice, things that are working for you to deal with a loss of a parent?
I'd say that love isn't linear, that every emotion you feel is legitimate, whether you feel sadness for what you may or may not have shared in your life with someone, whether you feel a loss of time lost, and in my case, all was well by the end. I'd made my peace with a lot of things while my dad was alive, which made the journey at the end much easier. But I'd say when it comes to grief, there's no manual, Gloria, there really isn't. And everyone deals with it in different ways. And there is no right way to deal with it. Some people feel things very acutely right at the beginning and can't stop crying, can't get out of bed, drink a lot, exercise excessively. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. So I would say that for anyone watching this, just go easy on yourself. It is not a quick process. There can be guilt for some people surrounding the fact that some people think they need to feel sadder than they do, but sometimes the sadness can come later. There are some people who feel guilt because they feel absolutely crippled and can't get out of bed and they've got a family to look after.
Do you feel any guilt?
No, I don't actually. I feel no guilt at all. I feel blessed that I had a relationship with my dad in the end, albeit a very unique one because he wasn't able to speak anymore. But he could understand and knew I was there, and I was able to be with him, and that for me brought a lot of solace. But I won't lie, it hit me hard, and I looked for a way to escape the grief. That it was just all encompassing, and I think I had exhaustion as well because I'd gone every day to the hospital for months, and then at the care home, and I didn't leave his side for a week. Didn't shower, didn't leave, didn't anything. I was there with my brother, and when I sort of emerged, I didn't know what to do with myself, and so I thought, well, I have to function. I'm an MP. I have this job. I've got to serve people. I can't serve people from my bed. I just didn't know what to feel. I had 2 young children, and they were sad, and I didn't want them to see me crying. And so I ended up just exercising excessively. I was doing MMA and Muay Thai kickboxing. I mean, I box anyway.
What's MMA?
Mixed martial arts.
Oh.
I was going to the mixed martial arts gym and just really doing MMA classes, because for an hour-long class, I was so worried about surviving it. Not worried in a bad way, but I just needed something intense to stop thinking. And for everyone, it's different, and there's no judgment. For some people, they use substances, they sleep, whatever it is. For anyone watching this, there's no right or wrong way. It just is.
You mentioned that you worked in A&E. Of course, we've been through a pandemic. You're an A&E doctor. You worked through the pandemic. You must have seen some terrible things.
Yeah. I worked in A&E, but I also worked in the intensive care at the Royal London as part of the family support liaison team. I first worked at the Nightingale as part of that team, and then that team moved to the Royal London because in the second wave, which I think was actually the worst one of all, the numbers of patients it was like out of a bad movie. You couldn't have predicted the sheer numbers, the wards that were filling up, the intensive care wards just overflowing with patients. And so the family support liaison team was established by a really good friend of mine called Gareth and another guy called Frank, and they invited me to come and be part of it. And what that meant was liaising with all the families that couldn't be there. And so there were families who'd waved goodbye to their loved ones on the back of an ambulance, thinking they'd join them at the hospital, but the pandemic meant they couldn't be there. And then their loved one was in intensive care, and they didn't know what was happening. So we would call them, fill them in, tell them what was happening, take messages to their bedside. And then we'd also sometimes schedule Zoom calls, or if they were going to pass away, we would try and facilitate a last visit. But for me, it affected me hugely. And there's one call that I'll never, ever forget as long as I live. I think doctors, you have these specific moments in your mind. And I took the iPad to a lady who was in her late 20s, and she was pregnant, and she'd had to have her baby by emergency cesarean on the intensive care unit, and she was unconscious. Her baby was in the neonatal intensive care unit. And on this call, these 3 little faces popped up, and she had 3 kids at home who were under 6 and their dad. And I'm there in full PPE, looking like an alien to them, and I'm saying hello to them on the iPad. And I said, I'm just going to turn the iPad so you can see your mummy. And they were having this discussion amongst themselves about how can we help mummy wake up? And then they had this discussion that if they all shouted together, maybe mummy would hear them. And so they just basically in unison just shouted, "Mummy, mummy, wake up. You've been asleep too long and we miss you." And then they said, "Doctor, do you think she can hear us?" And I just said, "Oh, she can't just hear you. She can feel you. She can feel your love coming through the iPad." And they were like, "Do you think she'll wake up soon? Do you think that helped?" And it's like, what are you supposed to say at that time? What are you supposed to do? You've got these 3 hopeful little faces, the same age as your children. And
there was no hope.
And it's just what to say? She was just lying there.
She didn't come back. She was
dying. She was dying, and it was heartbreaking. And that's just one story of.
Gosh, that's so tough.
It's just
can't stop thinking about those 3 kids now.
Yeah, and the 4th child as well.
Let's go back to your childhood, really, because when I was reading about you, I always have this joke, right, that no one got as bad A-levels as me.
Oh, I can trump you.
You
there.
trumped me.
Yeah, I can trump most people with that.
But then you end up going to medical school and being a doctor.
I wanted to be a doctor since when I was 3. I found out that my grandma was blind. My grandma in Pakistan was blind, and so that was it. I wanted to be a doctor to help her see. That was me done. But then you realise as you sort of grow older, particularly in those times, and from my background, you get made to manage your expectations as to what a girl like me could go on and achieve. But luckily, I was good at sport, good at music, and good at school, and I got really good sort of GCSE results and all of that, but still was kind of made to manage my expectations, because at that time, really, to go and do medicine, you had to come from wealth, and that certainly wasn't us. And but stuff got really, really tough at home, and I didn't go to all of my exams, and they weren't modular at the time. It was like you either show up or you don't, and then you have a couple of papers. And so I ended up going from being like a straight A student at GCSEs without having to think very much to basically failing my A-levels. I didn't go to the exam. So I just remember this weird sense. I remember this sensation of standing at a phone box, the old school phone boxes, calling my mum, going, I'm a complete failure. I just don't know what to do. And so fast forward, me and her, we went everywhere trying to find somewhere to resit my A-levels. I resat my A-levels, got really good grades, and I went round to medical schools sort of saying, look, life got in the way, would you consider me? And they were all like, don't bother, don't call us, we won't call you, basically. So I didn't want to give up. Like, this was what I was going to do. I was determined to do it. And I went and did a degree that I had no interest in because it had the word medical in it. So I went to study medical biochemistry and then got my degree. And then someone said, why don't you apply to Cambridge? I said, are you having a laugh? I don't know what you've smoked, but Cambridge would never look at a girl like me. Are you nuts? Never thought I'd get in a million years. And I got in. And so the girl that failed her A-levels, age 24, went to Cambridge to study medicine. And it just, I think the story and that really for me was just not giving up and not accepting the titles that other people put on me.
Right, there's a bit of a wild turn here, because I had this memory and I couldn't find it like on Wikipedia or anything of the things that I was looking at, but I just had this memory. I'm sure Rosena was like a singer in a band. I'm sure someone told me that.
Yeah. It was almost my sliding door moment, Gloria. So at the same time that I was getting into medical school, so I'd always been really musical, and my mum had been a famous singer in Poland, and I've always sang, and I've been in all sorts of bands, and I was offered a record contract, and I had to choose between that and going to medical school. So I chose to go to medical school because it'd always been my dream, but I carried on singing. I fronted loads of bands, and yeah, I love it. I think it makes talking in the chamber much easier when you're used to facing a crowd of people and giving it some large.
All right, very, very final question. Just let's see if we can get a yes or no. Oh, gosh. Do you want to be Labour leader?
No. I literally thought, you're going to not know where I'm going with that one.
You thought about it. Yeah. But we might get Rosena.
No, I just don't want to be in opposition for forever. If we don't win the next election, it means I'm spending the best years of my life in opposition again. I will have to leave and join a band, Gloria. No, I will. So for me, the thought of even going there is not an option, because I want us to win the next election. Genuinely, I'm not just saying it as a politician's answer. I genuinely want to win the next election, because if we don't, that's a decade of me sitting on the opposition benches, and
I've done it.
That's what I mean. So, and if we win, which is what I want, there was no room to think about being Labour leader.
Or a pop star, maybe.
That we can talk about.
Rosena Alin-Khan, highs and lows, but a genuine pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute honour to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you enjoyed that, there's a longer version of the interview on YouTube, which talks a little bit more about singing. You've been watching The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. The show is back every weekday from noon. Up next, it's On the Money with Liam Halligan, and I'll be back at 2 with Liam, but for now, I'll leave you with your weather forecast.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hi there.